Hello and welcome to another edition of Redcycle. Don't be a waster, your favourite podcast, at least I like to believe so, on all things recycling and environmental related. In today's episode we are going to cover, look, I suppose there's no other way of describing it, it's a fiasco. It really is the sort of stuff that gives recycling a bad name and leads credence to the whole recycling is a con, recycling's not real, that sort of stuff. And that is, of course, the Redcycle, collapse of Redcycle. And I'm reading an article here on The Guardian, so that means it must be true. I joke, but it's a reputable newspaper, Friday the 3rd of February, so just last week, saying that supermarket giants Coles and Woolworths have been ordered to dump more than 5,200 tonnes of soft plastic, which is currently at warehouses across New South Wales, and they're ordered by the EPA to get rid of it. They have been given a couple of options as to how they can get rid of it. They can either I think it's dump it at landfill, recycle it, or export it. So in theory, the EPA doesn't really care as long as the problem disappears. The problem seems to stem from the fact that this material is being stored in what is described as unsafe facilities or unsafe manners, to the point where it could fundamentally go on fire. And as we know from previous podcasts, recycling plants tend to go on fire. Why do they go on fire? Look, I suppose the fundamental reason is when you're storing product made out of petrochemicals that is incredibly calorific and burns extremely easily, sooner or later these things will go on fire. So storing immense volumes of the product, so 5,200 metric tons is pretty unbelievable. So of the 15 locations, 11 are of such a concern that the EPA has notified Fire and Rescue New South Wales and has requested the operators take immediate action to mitigate this. The cost alone of removing the soft plastic is estimated to be $3.5 million. I assume that is the cost of dumping it, which in New South Wales dumping is roughly $350 a tonne to dump at landfill. So would that make sense? I suppose does that broadly make sense? I haven't got a calculator with me, but it's in the ballpark, I suppose. So that's the scenario, and of course we have people, politicians, and different people crowding in and casting blame and doing what they usually do. So the EPA Chief Executive, Tony Chappell, said thousands of customers had diligently collected soft plastics and dropped them off at local supermarkets because they trusted their waste will be diverted from landfill and recycled. Stating the obvious there, Tony, and obviously the EPA doesn't see potentially that they have any role in ensuring there's, the semi-state or government agencies don't feel they have a role in ensuring that there are facilities available. So, I suppose, look, if you listen to any of our podcasts, you will, I think, know some of our views on this. I think what we were doing was, look, in some way, let's look at this in a positive light. Every cloud has a silver lining. And even though it may be difficult to see the lining on this one, the silver lining on this dark cloud, clearly there is one. I think we were kidding ourselves for years. I think society, government, state governments, federal government, and obviously industry and retail as well, we're kidding ourselves. We were giving away free or cheap plastic bags and making ourselves feel better that they were being recycled because this program existed called Redcycle, which would magically turn them into utterly unsellable products such as park furniture, flooring, stuff like that could only be given away. So clearly there was no commercial market for this, but it provided a real commercial benefit, I suppose, to people who, to shoppers who wanted to feel better about using their plastic bags, and to people who produce them and use them, such as the big retail chains, supermarkets, etc. But, I suppose, you're looking at that. So basically, the EPA is saying, dump it in landfill, which is like just absolutely, I suppose, it's the definition of burying the problem, to shipping it overseas. I've no idea who would be interested in taking this stuff unless you paid them a significant sum, quite possibly close to the $3.5 million mentioned. And then they'd probably, incinerate it or recycling it, which, let's be honest, that option is not available. at this point, because we've been pretending that for quite long enough. So I think this all stems back to what we've covered in the past. Plastic bags are probably one of the lowest grades of plastic available. Plastic degrades, and what is used to make plastic bags are all, already very low quality. The opportunity to recycle them is extremely low. You would need to add significant amounts of virgin plastic or new plastic to make them into any usable product. You can't upcycle them into a better, higher quality plastic product. And so fundamentally, you're talking about, junk that you're trying to justify a reason to use, such as putting into roads or flooring or insulation or stuff like that. So there is obviously the big elephant in the room that potentially could be used and is being used in places such as Japan and Sweden, etc., and that is incineration. I think we can clearly see from this that we can see that this stuff is so combustible that it's a health hazard, it's a danger to society, even just storing this stuff. So it wouldn't take much to actually burn it in a controlled environment and actually release that energy. When you're looking between the options of shipping it overseas to someone who's willing to take it, B, which obviously will take a lot of carbon emissions if that's the method we're using to measure the right outcome, or if we're looking at dumping in a landfill, which clearly is a terrible outcome. It will disintegrate. It will over time emit gases, which some will be captured, of course, by carbon gas capture methods at the landfill, but clearly that's not exactly an optimal system. Clearly, incineration, to my mind, in a modern plant, as in that exists in foreign countries, would clearly be a preferable option. Especially at the moment, we have extremely high, electricity prices. The other thing I would say is we have this absolute, reversal to burning this stuff, because of some environmental reasons. But we're probably reading our computers, we're probably reading, our lights are burning, and they're being burned fundamentally we're burning oil, we're burning coal, we're burning gas. Obviously, gradually we're moving through more renewable energies, but at the same time, Australia still relies to a large extent on carbon fuels. So, I think our view is very clear. We need to reduce plastic. We need to, and we have taken steps in this, credit where credit is due, but we need to really reduce the usage of this junk plastic wherever possible. And let's be honest, we survived for a long time without plastic shopping bags at the supermarket, so we can survive a long time more. I was speaking to somebody recently who works in consumer foods packaging, such as crisps, chips, that sort of stuff. And they told me that you could just as well pack crisps or chips in a paper packet. I'm not fully certain if that's accurate, but it's something I think we'll look at in a future podcast. But that the only real reason for plastic was the look and feel that people like. It gives a mark of quality, and of course, plastic is easy to colour and make it look very attractive to consumers. So I think again, let's be honest. Will we, as a society, learn from this fiasco? We'll learn some things. I think what we probably will do is we will probably accelerate the decrease in use of plastics. We're already banning a lot of single-use plastics in many Australian states and territories, which is great news. And I think fundamentally we will continue doing that. I personally am very surprised that there still is, just every supermarket still has plastic bags, and most people are, we do reuse them. That has increased for sure, but people are definitely still just, not thinking, grabbing that plastic bag at the supermarket. And I think that has to be something we have to address, moving forward. I think that has to be one of the first targets. To put in perspective, the volume of this, this 5.2, is that a megaton? I'm not sure what that is. 5.2 thousand tons is, I think it's described as filling 3 Olympic swimming pools. So it's a very sizable amount of plastic product, and it's something that clearly we want to avoid in future. But if we don't, let's be honest, the recycling, there isn't enough demand in the market potentially to create enough flooring, insulation, park furniture, that sort of stuff. There just simply isn't enough demand. So no matter what, even if we built the best recycling facilities in the world and put millions of dollars into them, the product you make, there's no demand, there's no off-taker for it. So the logical answer is, not to do that. The logical answer is to massively reduce the amount of plastic product plastic waste we're creating. So that's step A, by either banning it, by restricting it, by reducing it, bringing in alternatives. That has to be number one. And then, of course, my view would be build modern incineration plants, and they don't have to be in cities. They could be out in the middle of nowhere, where we can minimize any environmental impact and incinerate for energy. So then we'll use less coal, less gas, and help us. A, it won't go to landfill. B, it's the best of bad outcomes, and C, it's carbon neutral because you're displacing other carbon that would have been burned otherwise. So that's, to me, it seems like a no-brainer. I think the big handicap here, or the big hurdle that we're looking at, is clearly political. Is it politically feasible? I think a lot of people wanted to believe in the Redcycle story. I liked it. It gave everyone a feel good. You could feel good about just dropping off your plastics. It was everywhere in the country, at every Coles and Woolies. So it was super easy, super visible, and it made people feel good. And I think people, sometimes when things make people feel good, they want to hang on to them and cling on to them and not examine them too much. But I think thankfully that boat has sailed. I think the unsustainable nature of that program, which potentially could argue was greencycling, or greenwashing, I think is the term. And when I say greenwashing, I'm not accusing anybody of anything untoward, but I think we all did it to ourselves. We all greenwashed ourselves and felt a little bit better about the waste that we produced. So I think we all need to, be realistic, know the facts, know where the waste is going, and I think that applies to the EPA, that applies to the state governments, the federal governments, and the companies. There's a chain of custody in all these things, from the manufacturer to the retailer to the consumer. And I think we all need to, actually discuss the reality of stuff, rather than hide behind, 20-year plans or 10-year plans that sometimes are built on shifting sands, or it could be a mirage even where at the starting position. So, I think the silver lining is knowing the truth is always good. The truth is a great thing. The reality, you have to know the reality to know where you're going. You know where you're coming from to know where you're going, and I think that gives us much more clarity, so we can actually, get the right result. Because I suppose what is the right result? It's the outcome is what we all care about. It's carbon emissions. It's reducing waste to landfill. That's what we care about, rather than tricking ourselves along the journey. So, I'd be interested to hear your feedback as always. Happy New Year. I think this is our first podcast of 2023. And so I say Happy New Year to all our listeners. I hope it's a green and wonderful and, prosperous, green, happy and healthy New Year for everyone. So thanks again, and recycle. Don't be a waster.